There's a guy named Jimmy, and Jimmy's got a bit of a problem. He's really lonely. But that's about to change in a big way, because he's on the verge of becoming a billionaire. Yup, $3 billion. Jimmy's 22, a computer science student in Georgia, and honestly, he's kind of a shy, awkward dude. Never the popular guy, always wanting real friends but never quite fitting in. Then one day, everything starts to shift. He gets in early on this strange new thing called Bitcoin. He manages to grab some and decides to stash it away on this sketchy dark website called Silk Road. Fast forward to 2012, Jimmy logs back in, planning to withdraw his Bitcoin. But something weird happens. He double-clicks the withdrawal button by accident and boom, he gets double the amount he was trying to pull out. At first, he's confused. Then it clicks this is a glitch. And instead of reporting it, Jimmy leans all the way in. He makes a bunch of new accounts, keeps depositing Bitcoin, double-clicking the withdrawal, and raking in double every time. In just a few days, Jimmy ends up with over 50,000 Bitcoin, which, back then, was worth around $600,000. That's a life-changing amount of money, especially for a broke college student. And now that he's finally got some cash, Jimmy's ready to buy what he's always wanted: friends. He hits the local bars, buys rounds for strangers, books luxury hotel rooms, and splurges at Gucci all in the hope of finally feeling like he belongs. Before you know it, Jimmy's rolling up in a Tesla. Then he drops a fat chunk of change on a brand new house by the lake. And YP, here are some actual pictures of that place. It's wild. The house. It's got a full bar stocked with top-shelf booze. And believe it or not, there's even a stripper pole. A stripper pole. Jimmy went all in. And suddenly, surprise, everybody wants to hang out with Jimmy. Just like that, the guy who used to sit alone at lunch is now the life of the party. He starts throwing these insane, over-the-top bangers. Here he is partying with two women, then a different night here he is with two other women. Jimmy's not lonely anymore. After all those years feeling invisible, he finally has what he always wanted: friends. And this new party boy lifestyle, it doesn't just last a few weeks, it goes on for years. You'd think the money would run out eventually with the way he's spending, right? But nope. Turns out Jimmy's early stash of crypto just keeps getting more valuable. By 2018, his holdings are worth an estimated $200 million. Yeah, million with an M, and Jimmy's all about keeping the good vibes going. He wants his friends to stick around, so he treats them big time, like flying them on a private jet just to watch a college football game. He covers everything. There's even a photo of them all smiling at the game. And that's not all. He once gave each of his friends $10,000 just to go on a shopping spree in Beverly Hills. That's 10 grand each. Jimmy clearly wants to impress. So much so that he literally keeps a suitcase full of cash in his room, and when he's partying, he'll casually pull it out to show the women he's with, hoping maybe, just maybe, one of them will like him enough to be his girlfriend. Spoiler, none of them do. Now, obviously, his friends know he's loaded. They ask him where all this money is coming from, but Jimmy? He doesn't mention the whole Silk Road glitch thing. Instead, he just says he's a super smart crypto investor, and hey, it sounds legit, so that's what they believe. Everything seems to be going great. He's rich, surrounded by people, and finally feels liked, and none of them would ever betray him. Right, well, one day, Jimmy heads out of town. While he's gone, someone, likely one of the people he trusted, breaks into his house. Here's actual surveillance footage from the night it happened. When Jimmy gets back, it's a nightmare. His place has been ransacked. $400,000 in cash gone. And worse, they stole 150 Bitcoin. Apparently, Jimmy kept physical backups of his Bitcoin, and someone knew exactly where to find them. He calls the police, but in the end, it's just another burglary. So police don't really do anything, and the case ends up going cold. But old Jimmy, he isn't going to let this go. And so he hires a local private investigator to look into it. And so she starts investigating and she immediately gets suspicious of Jimmy's friends and she starts low-key following them around, stalking their socials and conducting background checks on them until she finally feels like she's figured out which one of them broke into his house and ripped him off. But apparently when she tells Jimmy, Jimmy doesn't believe her. I mean, he trusts his friends too much, but he doesn't want to give them up, and so he and the private investigator, they decide to go their separate ways and his burglary case remains open. Meanwhile, the IRS Criminal Investigation Unit, they've been investigating a hack on the Silk Road, not Jimmy's glitched Bitcoin heist from all those years ago, but a completely different hack. And during that investigation, they also happened to notice that back in 2012, 50,000 Bitcoin were taken by someone, some unknown person. They don't know who, so they start investigating this and following this trail, and they can see transactions that lead back to an exchange, but they don't know whose account it is. But then Jimmy transfers around $800 worth of Bitcoin to that exchange, and it requires him to enter his name and his address. So now the IRS Criminal Investigation Unit knows that the 2012 Bitcoin thief is Jimmy, and now they're going to go after him, and so boom, they put together a little sting operation. And one day, these agents suddenly show up to Jimmy's house, sort of undercover, and they pretend they're investigating the burglary where his Bitcoin and cash were stolen. And since that burglary investigation was never closed, it makes sense to Jimmy why they're still investigating it. And so Jimmy invites these agents into his place and he's super nice to them. And he seems to love that they're there because, remember, he really wants friends, and so he's totally just chilling with these agents like they're his boys. He even tells them how he used to keep a suitcase full of cash around and that he'd show it to women hoping to get laid. And the agents, they just keep charming him, pretending to be his friend. And he brings them down to his basement. He shows them his bar and his stripper pole. And now these agents, they have to have a sense that Jimmy is a lonely guy because they keep talking to him and they keep charming him. And finally, they get him on the topic of Bitcoin. And they're like asking him to explain it, and they're asking him how long he's been involved in it. And he ends up opening up his laptop and showing them one of his crypto wallets filled with a ton of Bitcoin, like $60 or $70 million worth. And visually seeing this wallet with their own eyes ends up being all the evidence these agents need. And so they leave, and later they come back with a search warrant and boom, they bust in and raid his house. And eventually, bam, they arrest him. Here's his mugshot. It was one of the biggest mysteries in crypto. Who stole 50,000 Bitcoins, which would ultimately be worth more than $3 billion. Yeah, at the time of Jimmy's arrest, his Bitcoin was worth $3.4 billion. Oh my god, but at the end of it all, he cooperates with police. In the end, Jimmy loses it all. He's forced to give up every last bit of his Bitcoin, takes a plea deal, and gets sentenced to about a year in prison. Now, I don't know for sure, but let's be real, those so-called friends, the ones he flew around on private jets, the ones he handed $10,000 to just for a shopping spree, I'm willing to bet none of them showed up to visit him behind bars. And now that he's no longer sitting on billions in crypto, yeah, I'd be surprised if any of them are still around. But hey, that's just a guess.